Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. May I start with something I don't do very often in the Chamber, and that's start with an apology to the Minister. I woke up in a rather enlightened mood this morning and retrospectively considered my amendment today. Whilst there are some very relevant and valid points to be made in it and to consider, my colleagues will go through some of these. I would like to start with a positive. We on these benches welcome the Scottish Government's plans to promote active travelling. We believe that it's a vital component in not just reducing carbon emissions, but also in tackling health issues such as obesity, but as well as promoting affordable and accessible forms of transport. We do therefore welcome the appointment of an Active Nation Commissioner. This seems like a very sensible idea and one that we can support. Our only ask is that the role of this Commissioner is clear and that the objectives and measurable outcomes are part and parcel of this role. We would also expect that this new position should be charged with ensuring that every penny of the proposed active travel budget is spent sensibly and wisely, and with the right balance and mix of projects and investments that will ultimately help the government meet its objectives. So there is my concession on that. Our amendment didn't address this appointment, but be assured that the new Commissioner will have the support of these benches in the task before him or her. In the last Holyrood election, the Scottish Conservatives stood on an explicit manifesto promise to promote active travel in Scotland. Active travel, as we know, when properly promoted and facilitated, has countless health and social benefits, many of which will be discussed over the course of this afternoon's debate. But our amendment today makes reference to a number of issues surrounding the current plan, which I'd like to explore. The four main points in our amendment are around progress, funding, collaboration and infrastructure. Starting off on the progress front, we feel that insufficient progress has been made. Now, it's true that Scotland is a diverse country with very differing travelling needs. And it's also fair to say that the weather isn't always kind to us, as active travel invariably means more walking and cycling. But these should come as no great surprise to anyone who chooses to face the elements and opt for a healthier commute to work or school. If, for example, we look at the cycling action plan laid out by the government in 2010, at the current rate, the Scottish Government will not meet their 2020 target of ensuring that 10% of all journeys are made by bicycle. Transport Scotland's own reports show that cycling as a mode of transport to work sits at just over 2%, so we're quite some way off the 10% target. The 2013 Cycling Action Plan for Scotland set some admirable ambitions, but so-called everyday bike rides has increased by just 0.2% in a decade. So at the current rate of increase, the 10% target will indeed be met in 300 years. And by then, I suspect we'll be taking hovercrafts to work instead. In fact, today, national statistics show that people are shifting back to the car, and this is worrying. Now, the main reasons given are that the length of their journeys were far too far to walk or cycle, but secondly, there's a perception that there are too many cars on the road. So there's very little progress been made in the psychology behind modal shift, and that has not been addressed in the government's motion today. The second point we'd like to make is around funding. Absolutely, funding plays a fundamental role in the success of this policy, and whilst we do welcome the government's commitment today to increase funding by £40 million in the coming financial year, it is important to see how we got to where we are today. In 2010, the active travel budget was £35.7 million. This reduced to £29 million in 2014 and down to £25 million by 2015. In the current financial year, the budget sits at around a real terms cut of 8% since 10%. So again, whilst today's budget today announced is very welcome, it has to be noticed that this is a somewhat knee-jerk reaction to the fact that all the warnings are pointing to us being way off target. We will be seeking greater clarity on how targeted and effective this additional funding will be, which specific projects it will be put towards to, and we will be monitoring the success or otherwise of that spend. The devil is very much in the detail. But funding isn't everything. I was pleased to hear the Minister speak in his opening remarks around the important point of collaboration. A key driver in ensuring the success of this plan will be better collaboration. If it's very brief.
Bruce Crawford.
My understanding is that funding for active travel has actually increased year on year, even prior to the announcement from the Minister. Your amendment seems to suggest that more money needs to go into this area. If that's the case, how much and where's it coming from?
Jamie Greene.
I think I've already welcomed the increase that the Minister has made of 40 million, and all I'm asking for is some greater clarity on where it will be spent. It is fair to say that the active travel budget has been cut year on year in the last 10 years, and those are, I believe, according to SPICE figures. Happy to check them after the debate. On collaboration, Government, Transport Scotland, local authorities and local communities must work together to ensure the success of the Government's plans. In a 2016 Transport Scotland's review of active travel report, it highlighted a lack of liaison in a number of cases. I will quote from that report. It says, "The Scottish Government does not rigorously check whether schemes accord with its own or local policies, and does not commonly advocate good outcomes for active travel in local decision-making. Local interest and capacity is essential to generate effective community-led schemes." In contrast, Presiding Officer, the UK Government has created an active transport policy which has very much centred around a community basis. Up to £1 billion of funding for cycling and walking projects has been made available to local bodies. And this way, local communities can themselves identify which projects would be the most effective, rather than central government taking all the decisions. The Scottish Conservatives have also been calling for safe travel routes to schools. We've also been asking for one segregated cycle route in each of our cities, and I hope that's something the Minister will take on board, and indeed calling for greater collaboration between government, local authorities and the third sector. In terms of the amendments today, we're very happy to support Labour's amendment. They make a very valid point around transport poverty, and the Government is welcome to offer more detail as to how this additional funding might target that. The Lib Dem amendment also points out the importance of cycling from a very early age, and we're happy to support that as well. We're unable to support the Greene amendment today, as we do not think that a predefined or fixed amount dedicated in the budget to active travel is the best way to approach it. We do believe that government needs flexibility in that, so unfortunately we're unable to support that amendment. I do move the amendment in my name, and I hope I can rely on the support of other parties today. Thank you.